So I'll just say I'm going to start right over here with Jenny, and we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Koni Jablonski. I'm 53 years old. I live in Arizona. And I'm very pleased to be here with this beautiful group of ladies to share some of our experiences and our message. My message is that prior to my NDE, I was a champion for everyone but myself. I experienced abuse and trauma and devastation, abandonment in multiple ways. And from the time I was a little girl, there was a voice in my head that said, when I grow up, I'm not going to talk to people like that. When I grow up, I'm not going to treat a child like that. When I grow up, I'm going to help people realize that they are worthy of being loved. But then I grew up. And the memory of that trauma and the feeling of unworthiness ruled my life. And it took a couple of near-death experiences and a few not so transformative, spiritually transformative experiences, which did not lead me to a bookstore to buy crystals or sage or a book by Marianne Williamson, to change my life. In the last NDE I experienced, Jesus was there. Pretty sure it was Jesus that looked just like all the paintings of Jesus. And he said, "Come with me, you've suffered enough." And I held his hand. And I pulled my hand back and I said, "No, you're wrong. There's something important I have to do. I have no idea what it is, but my consciousness, as clear as day, knew that I was meant for something greater." And I did not come back healed, as many people will share with you beautiful stories, and in some respects I wish I was one of them. I came back having touched Jesus' hand, experienced a frequency that was so incompatible with everything that I was. So I was compelled to heal. I did not have a choice. I shook at my core. It wasn't that I made myself wrong. Please don't hear me say that. But I had experienced trauma, and I was broken in many ways. And the first part of my experience was spending a lot of money, lying on people's tables, giving my power over to them, saying, "Heal me, I'm here, fix me, I'm broken." And I spent a lot of money before I realized my best healer, and pardon me for speaking a universal truth, your best healer is you. Now, I came back with some pretty incredible gifts. My husband went to Caltech and UCLA, computer science and engineering, and I majored, although I didn't graduate and finish my degree in economics. I went on to work in security, and I protected the Queen of Saudi Arabia and the religious consultant to the King of Saudi Arabia. I lived a badass life. And that strength propelled me forward and gave me the will. And frankly, I had sort of what many of you might refer to as a BS meter when I came back as well. I could see energy, I could see chakras, I could see meridians, I could see the 40 miles of nerves in the human body, but I didn't know what any of that was. And I somehow knew the truth. Now, everyone in this room has a different truth. I understand that. But for me, seeing energy and knowing where it is and where it isn't, and seeing the effects of healing or not, there was a certain kind of truth in that for me. So, together with the gifts I had, and together with the many experiences I've had from traveling to Australia, working with an Aboriginal woman, working with shaman from Brazil, working with a Native American master who became my very good friend, and when he was dying, he came to live with me. Studying many healing modalities, reading hundreds of books, I have come to the conclusion that my purpose is as an educator to help all of us, or any of you that resonate with my story, that we need to take responsibility for ourselves and authentically do an inventory of where our wounds are and heal them so that we can experience the joy and the self-love and the universal love that so many people here talk about. It is attainable. I am living proof.
Wow. It's so funny because being asked to speak on consciousness and love, the first thing you realize is your consciousness is all subjective. It is what we individually process within our mental capacity. Beautiful story. I just can't imagine peeling back those onions in 10 minutes, you know, because as you go through things, it increases our resonance. It helps us to have a higher frequency so we can share and be with other people in their space. My story is very different from hers, as you probably find with all four of us. I was in the military, in training, and I got bitten by a little bitty invader tick down in North Carolina. And at that time, I was just like, you know, so gung-ho, so, you know, objective-driven to, I just kept on going. And next thing I knew, my temperature was like 105. They rushed me to the hospital, and they did everything to get it down. They saw these spots all over my body and everything like that. And nothing was working. Finally, they put me on a refrigerated bed, and I just went out. I passed out. And I was out for about 3 weeks. And the difficulty in sharing this with anybody is I suppressed that event for years because I'm gung-ho, I'm a military officer, I can't talk about things like that. I may even end up in the psych ward. I might lose my security clearance and various other things. So for 8 years, I suppressed it. But then I realized I was beginning to have the dreams again, the dreams of going in the wormhole, the dreams of just consciousness and everything like that. It was as though it was trying to surface. I couldn't hide it anymore. So I did it as the best I could, and then I resigned from the military. And that's why I'm here today, to share my story and to let everyone know that it is happening often in the military, more often than not. We're not advised to speak of this because we have so much to lose. And one of the things from my having done all this is like you want to study, you want to learn, you want to see what's happened, how did that happen to me? What was it? Did it really happen? Because I didn't tell anybody. So I studied with a rabbi. I studied in the Catholic Church. I studied all faith religions. I studied, I got my PhD. I was just ravenous for information. I was an information magnet, all about consciousness. But the funny thing about consciousness is some people believe that there's 7 dimensions. Some people think it's 9. Other people think it's 144. Imagine that. But it's so subjective. Because when I was out most of the time, 3 weeks is a long time, and then, oh yes, some people think it's 1. And I'm almost of the school to think it's 1, simply because I had someone do a reading for me, and they came to me and they looked into my eyes, and I looked back, and they took my hand. I was like, okay. And she said, I see you. I said, what do you mean? I thought you're communicating with the other side. She said, I am. And I see you on the other side. And one thing, when I did come back, it was like I had to come back. I didn't want to come back. It was a beautiful experience. I believe that I was at the Messianic plane of consciousness. That is the consciousness that some people call Christ consciousness, because there's so much love and caring and forgiveness. And I mean, it's very humbling. And who would want to come back? And then I remember when I was in the hospital bed, I was in the corner of the room, and I looked down on my body, and I said, who would want to be that girl? Who would want to come back here? I want to stay. Why can't I stay? And then this beautiful supreme being that at the time I kind of thought it was Mother Mary, and it wasn't any words, it was just information impressed upon my mind. And she said, I have to help people. I have to help my family. I have to tell my story. She wasn't gonna let me come back anyway, so I had to come back, and so I did. And it was to the doctor's surprise. They looked at me and they was like, she's awake. How did she, what happened? What? And then they were like, the nurse came and everybody come running to me. I had lost like 30 pounds. And they were like, how did this happen? I wasn't saying anything. I kept it silent for like, I know 8 years. I kept it silent. And then I just felt my energy and my soul rising, and I knew I had to share. I knew I had to share. So I was in the Washington, D.C. area. Irons was there, and I was doing a TV show in the public access arena there. And I wanted to go and interview the people in Irons. I'm still in the closet now. I haven't told anybody my experience. I wanted to go and touch bases with the people and interview them. Next thing I know, I'm out of the closet. I'm in front of a Japanese camera crew, crying, sharing that we should love everybody. We are one. There's no difference between you, me, or any of us. So we should love everybody. And that's what I'm back here to say. And it was just amazing just being in this environment with these people. It's just amazing. And whatever you experience, whatever your consciousness led you to, you are right. Stand in your truth. You're right. And share it with others, because you can help. You are helping. So continue to do so. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Terry Larkin, and I'm just blessed to be with these wonderful people. In fact, blessed to be with the people in this conference, and the interaction is just amazing because in my near-death experience, while all of the details are just spectacular and wonderful for me, they brought out meaning for myself as my life moved on. And having been in a car accident, my spleen ruptured and I was opened up from here to here when they couldn't deal with it. But they gave up basically in the 80s when no one was really talking about near-death experiences. And I was above my body, able to give details of everything. But what was fascinating for me then and continue with me during my whole research, I was very much like, she's speaking of where I was thinking totally logically above there. I'm going, wow, where did they find my own doctor? And my body's down there. They've given up. Only one of the doctors, they began to go away a few at a time. And my own doctor said, I'll wait for your husband, Doug, to get back, because he was with my 2 young children, taking them to a house. They'd been in the accident too. But I could see them. I knew where they went. I saw the house that he was taking him to, and I'm thinking, I wonder why he took him to that house. I was expecting him to go to Bailey and Trina's. I mean, those were the logical thoughts going through me as I'm looking at my body. But I was eventually able to tell all those details to the doctor. I also was able to, at that point in time, I was moving into a bigger space and enveloped into that incredible wet light that so many of you have experienced. And that unconditional love that was there was what enveloped me, has kept in my body memory my whole lifetime. And when I was out, that time and space and understanding about the universe again was just absorbed into me. And I knew that I had been in time and space and that it wasn't linear like we think, that past, present, future is all happening at the same time, and that we are in that thread of experience of it in our daily lives, and yet our mind can't wrap around that. When I came back into my body again, there you go, back in, I felt like I was out forever in a very long, lots of experiences that I am telling in my story of, called the light gap meaning God's amazing presence, because I was enveloped into that unconditional love. And all I could say when I came back is, love is all there is. Love is all there is. Well, at the time in 1982, and I understood that I would heal, and that I knew I was downloading information about the healing process, and that I'd be healing quickly, and why, and how. And it was like, I'm a teacher, science and math major of all things, and I'm teaching. I'm not in the health field, so why am I getting this information? But I was then a sponge. I put it away to the side too. I was in a very place where people just were talking about these, and I didn't even know what to call it. I had no word. And it wasn't until quite a bit later, I was 32 at the time, I'm now 70, I'll let you do the math. And when this happened, I was catapulted into 2 things, and this is where I was for a long time. My professional life over here, and then my spiritual life over here, making sense out of it all. And I was learning, I was a sponge. I was working towards my master's, and it was like, okay, I'm gonna do the brain because I wanna know what's happening here. And yes, I could use that teaching. So that's where it took me. And I began to learn from so many different people. And do you know, the universe starts working for you. And the people you need show up just at the right time when you need them. And those people showed up for me. I could name so many names of people. But what happened to me is because of those 2 lives, which was not a good idea, by the way, because I did heal very quickly. My doctor kept saying, because I had to be flown to another hospital, and the surgery was very difficult once I came back in my body. And at that point in time, I was not really telling the doctor, but at the same time, I was processing it. And part of my healing story is that I realized not until later that as I came home and I was healing, I was able to take myself and move myself back into that space of the unconditional love. I was putting myself in the frequency of love. My energy field, I'm sure all of you have had these kind of fun experiences where you're affecting all these different things like lights and computers and watches, and I became the joke of my janitor in my classroom because of the lights were always going out in my room, the computers were crashing, and the biggest thing is street lights would come on when I was out jogging, and dark, and then I'd get 10 feet away from it, and it would go back off, or it'd go back on, and I'm going, what is that? It'd go off, and it was like, what is this? And this would be happening to me again and again. Well, I could play with those lights, and I could tell you lots of stories, because I began traveling as well. I was taking students to the Amazon in Peru, and hiking the Inca Trail up to Cusco and Machu Picchu. I was in various places in Peru. I was a sponge for the shaman teaching, but I kept asking really different questions, and I'd say, no, I don't need, I think I understand why you're using this drug, or you are shaking this, or there's a certain kind of incense you're using, but I want to know what's going on in your mind. What are you doing? Where are you going? Because my understanding is that I need to connect with that universe. I need to connect into the frequency of light, energy, and information. I now know that power is so incredible. Every single one of us are such magnificent, powerful in our human bodies because of the energy field around us. And of course, we all have heard all the scientists starting to really give that information out to us, but we can tap into it. We are powerful beyond measure. My second, those dips and valleys of your life, well, I was headed for another dip. My huge learning in the Amazon and things was I began to have experiences, mystical experiences that I was afraid to share with anybody. But down there, they were very open. And so there I am standing on a walkway 250 feet up in the Amazon saying, we're all connected. All of us are here. And I'm saying all these things, kind of half to myself and half out loud. And the students are beside me going, okay, Mrs. Larkin, are you okay? And I'm going, we are all connected. We're all one. It's one mind. And what one does affects the other. And so that love, we are, that's the most important message. And yet I was still wanting to put it in earthly body terms instead of divine love. I learned from so many different gifted teachers, and many of which are speaking here. At the time that I needed them again was in 2008, which was well past my near-death experience. And what happened to me was I let it all come back in because I had this other side of myself that I wouldn't let out. And I became very sick, and I can't go into the story. I did tell it in here. But when you all of a sudden have 5 specialists looking at you and trying to figure out what's wrong, and something is attacking every organ in my body, and I was a very sick person. And it was like, why? Why did I didn't learn all about healing and die and come back to live a life like this. And literally, I dissolved on a yoga mat one day. Meditation just came to me always. I'd been meditating, and it was Terry, a huge booming voice, and I'd not heard a voice. Booming voice, Terry, you know how to heal. Heal yourself. You know how to do it. And it was like, oh my goodness, yes I do. I did it before. I was able to do that. Step by step, I needed to learn again how to put myself back into that frequency of love, light, and information. But my biggest learning, and what I advise for all of you, I had to get rid of the junk too. I was in love with everybody. It reminds me of you a little bit too much. It was like, what is going on? You know, you're a little bit too lovey to everybody. All but myself. I loved everyone, but I had to learn self-love. I took upon myself all these problems of all these people and myself and didn't deal with it. And it was like waking up. There was another huge awakening. You need to love yourself unconditionally before you can share the love with the world. We can share this incredible story with people, and we can teach them how to do the work of being able to heal, and that's where my life took me. And recently now, I have gone into training as a healer, now that I've retired from teaching, and I am a reconnective healer. I've found that takes away what I was doing wrong. David Hawkins came into my life, Dr. David Hawkins, right at the time I needed him, because I needed to surrender the control. I needed to surrender my whole, it's not about me. And as a healer, it's not about me. It's about being a catalyst to bring in that energy that we all have around us and share with you, and you share with me. As a healer, you're looking at that person in unconditional love, putting your body into that deep meditative state that I know how to get into now. Suzanne Giesemann was a huge teacher for me. The spiritual world came alive. My niece died at 19. My sister and I grew together. She had a light experience after her death. Anne came to me. It was the first time I had literally had someone. She was sitting on my bed talking to me. Beautiful. She had fallen from an 8-story building. But she was well, and she had her dog with her, speaking of animals and all that. And I was hearing the dog's chain, and I was hearing her voice, and we had this marvelous conversation. My doors were kept opening and opening. And the more we let them, the more that we allow instead of try to control. And I was trying to control. I was trying to send the healing to all those places in my body where it was the worst. But the universe is a very intelligent field. I needed healing other places. And I learned how to do it. And that's what I'm sharing with the world right now. And I only share it because every one of you, heal yourself, heal others, is a two-way communication street. We heal ourselves when we heal another. When we heal another, we heal each other. That's the connected field where we all live. We're all in there. And that love is just more incredible than I can ever say. And love is all there is.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be everywhere. My name is Connie Scavella, and I had 2 near-death experiences, one when I was being born, and then one a while later. What fascinated me about having a near-death experience is that it's ineffable. It's really hard to put into words what happens to you, and yet it's the greatest thing that can ever happen to you. If you could for a second just imagine the most amazing experience you can remember. Maybe it's the first time you fell in love, or the most recent incredible sunset you saw that took your breath away, or the first time you saw a baby. Maybe you completed a project that was amazing, and that feeling for a second or minute or an hour, what that felt like. And then let it expand and go for the rest of the day. And then you wake up in the morning and it's still there. And it keeps going throughout the whole week. And you notice it's the next month and you still have that feeling 24 hours a day. and it's the new year and it's still with you. And you come back here next year, and that feeling, that amazing feeling of your heart opening up all the time, 24/7, is still with you, and it never went away. And that's what it feels like to be on the other side. My near-death experience was, when you scale it on that 16-point scale of which experiences did you go through, I went through all 16. And it was transformative. It was 3 years before I told anybody about it. I removed myself from the world. I sold everything, lived on the beautiful beaches of Siesta Key, Florida, and did nothing but walk the beach during sunrise and sunset for a few years, and that was it. It's about all I could handle. I couldn't integrate with society. And I was in a state of unconditional love and bliss 24/7. And yet, everyone around me was in a state of disharmony. They were distressed and worried and frustrated, and it was the exact opposite of what I was feeling, and I had no way to share and tell them how to do what I just came through. And so that became my obsession. How do I have everybody have this feeling all the time? Now, I have a researcher's brain. What that means is I will complicate, elongate, and confuse everything. So my mission was to figure out, how do I tell this in a way that people can understand? I had a nonlinear experience, and I have to explain it in a linear format so everyone can understand and learn it. And so I used Occam's razor, which means you take your formula into the simplest possible way, add nothing else. Oh, that's hard for me. And so is 10 minutes. And so I thought, okay, let me research this. I took 12 years to research what happened specifically in my experience that is not happening on Earth. Why am I in such joy and bliss all the time and nobody around me is feeling that? And I went through all the, as we all did, go through all these different teaching modalities and started eliminating all of them. And I narrowed it down to 4 things. And the reason it turned out that way is there were 4 phases of my near-death experience that were very profound, and each one of the 4 elements that causes disharmony in our lives relate to those 4 things, okay? So, to simplify it, I came up with an acronym. That's the name of the book, is SOAR, S-O-A-R. Each letter is an acronym for the stages. So what I'll do, as long as I can go, I'm going to tell you the 4, I call them self-sabotaging behaviors that we go through. And that's what knocks us out of the experience. The reason is, if you have a destination to go to, which is all peace and love, you need to know where you're starting from, right, in order to get there. So what are the 4 self-sabotaging behaviors? The first S is what I call separation. And that means there's a distinction, a separation from where you are and where you want to be, or what you have and what you want to acquire, right? In my experience, it started with that separation from my body when I was 30 feet above my body, then 30,000 feet, right? And it ties into the tunnel, and going into the tunnel. So in that separation, how do you recognize it in your own life? Often, especially for this crowd, it's an experience of you notice the distinction between your ego and spirit. You feel the spiritual things you want to do, but should I make money off of that? Should I do this? If you're an experiencer, you know it very well from the experience of being in the world and yet wanting to go back to that presence. And it's very gut-wrenching. So that's separation. It'll take you from where you are. Think of it like Velcro, and you're peeling it apart, and you hear that sound. One soft side, one sticky side. That's what it feels like. I always want to be on the soft side, right? But life here on Earth is the sticky side. So separation is the first thing that you can use to notice. The second one is O, and that's called outsourcing. Think of it like if you outsource a job, right? But outsourcing is outsourcing yourself to other people. You're looking to others to validate you, approve you. And how does that show up in life? Often think of the most popular thing as social media, right? People are always looking to that. How am I doing? You're comparing. Am I good enough? They reach for that instead of falling to their knees first thing in the morning. And everything is looking outside of you. Okay. In life, what does that feel like? It feels like you are spinning from one person, one thing to the next, right? When you're in separation, it feels like you're stretched. You're trying to cover everything. But outsourcing is spinning. The next one is the A, and that is attachment. Okay. This is the space where you're stuck in life, but is the place where you see the addictions. This is where you see control issues and those types of things. This is where there is a difficulty letting go. People say, oh, just let go. Like, oh, that's very hard, right? But any rodeo or bronco bull rider knows there's a time to hang on and there is a time to let go. And in life, we don't seem to know. We just keep holding on, right? If you had a gallon of water and I asked you to hold it for me, no problem. But if I wouldn't let you let go 3 days later, that's really hard on you. It's very heavy. So you have to know if you're attached to something. And then the fourth stage is the R, and that's what's called reversion. And reversion means you're going into the past, and you're comparing it to the past. When you're stuck in the past and always reliving something, generally that's a very ego-based place, and it's a place of fear. And so a lot of people, if you feel that you're fearful, you're always looking backwards, this happened before, you can't get free. Okay, so SOAR, separation, outsourcing, attachment, and reversion. So catch yourself. In the book, I give you a chart of all of them. And the one question, all you have to do when you have disharmony, you don't have to think and go through a list, just say, am I separate from what I want? Am I attached in any way? Am I looking to others to validate or appreciate me? And have I gone into reversion, into the past? And then for each one of those, if you know, yes, that's it, then all you need is the antidote. If you know the problem, the behavior, you just need a solution. And the solution will take you and elevate you to that level of consciousness that will set you free. It'll unlink you from your past. I don't know if I have time for the four or not, but okay. So, thank you.
Okay, so you can get ready for your questions, but I'll start over with Jenny. Whenever you were talking about you were everyone's champion, you were helping everybody and then all kinds of things in your life, help us understand from when you learned about self-love and all the things that you progressed to, what about you being the champion for others subsequent to this?
I apologize. I don't think I understand your question.
About basically the role that you have with others. You were everybody's champion, and now, what's now?
Now I work with both humans and horses who have been traumatized, and I work with them in a talk-based way. Do I have healing skills? Yes, I have healing skills. I'm an incredibly profound, capable healer. But in my journey, I found that when other people heal you outside of your own self-authority or intention, that healing either doesn't stick or necessitates something else to happen to you so that you can learn the reason why you were traumatized or ill in the first place. And so I work through sharing my experiences, and in a very similar way to Connie's book, the systems of belief and patterns that she has identified very clearly in a beautifully succinct package. Well, I'll just say, because I want to be brief, that I feel that forgiveness is the gateway to all healing. And for each of the items that Connie mentioned, we can call it afflictions, patterns, programs, whatever you want to call it, I believe forgiveness is the key, love is the answer, and there's good in everything.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay, so you talked about being in the military, and you talked about hiding this for 8 years and so on. So looking back and looking at today, where in the military connections that you have now have you helped other people see what happened to you? Because you hid it. Today, are you sharing any of that with folks in your area, in the military connections that you had before? Where is all that combining?
Well, today, I like to tell people I'm out of the closet. You know, I have, in the military, there's something that's really prevailing right now called military sexual trauma. And it's an ugly, ugly beast, and it's a high end of post-traumatic stress disorder. They had a summit at the Washington, D.C. Military Center, and what I did was I went to the summit and I gave away 50 of my books to the people that were getting help from their therapist. Because my book is one where you can sit down, self-reflect, write a little notes, and go on with your journey. It's for you and you alone. And that's what I think we're sharing here, because you have to get to that place yourself. I've also been up to Capitol Hill. I belong to a women's group that are also veterans, and I've been on Capitol Hill, and I've been an advocate, again with my book, to get the people to realize that veterans are having NDEs in numbers which you will never know, because it's not in our, we're strong, we're defenders of the country, so we don't talk like this, but I do now, and I'm proud of it, and I'm trying to help as many people as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Terry Larkin, when you talked about being a mom and a wife, and that you're the teacher and the teacher and the teacher, how are you connected with the folks that you were back then when you finally came back from your traumas and your illnesses and the doctors did, etc.? Because you have a very good memory of this doctor left and this one walked away. You have a lot of detail of that. So how has that all played out, especially with your family and their knowledge and what you've shared?
Part of me being a teacher is that children are one of my dear to my heart people to affect. And when I came back, that's one of the places it went, was to my own children, but also to the children that I was teaching. And I was spreading that message of caring and loving and compassion and kindness at a time when schools were dealing with the strict method of reaching children. And I've really had a pretty powerful effect on especially special needs children, and being able to really put myself in and see them as a perfect soul in a body that has some difficulties. My own family, luckily, my husband is sitting right out here. He's my champion. And 49 years we've now been married, and he's lived through all of the up and down of my near-death experience, my experiences in the Amazon, sitting there holding a tiny little sloth, looking in the eyes and then wondering what happened to me, and just many stories on and on. It has transformed my life to my family in different ways. I have 3 grown children with grandchildren, and in the grandchildren you see that next generation that's coming. I've loved the H.M. Atwater, and I see you sitting there, her book about the children's stories. And we have stories like that. There's a chapter in my book about children and children's stories, because when you teach, you hear them. They write them in their journal. They draw pictures of them. They talk to each other like, oh, I knew you in heaven. I mean, and we as people can greet them with that love and caring, kindness, openness that sometimes their parents can't. Their parents are locked into, don't talk like that. This happened with my own father, would not let me talk about, when my mother was dying, she was seeing angels, and I'm championing it all and saying, yes, isn't it beautiful? And my father's going, no, don't let her talk like that. That's not real. And it's like, yes, it is. You've been hearing my story for how many years? So we can affect our families, our children, whatever we do in our life, in living with my profession as a teacher. I affected many, many students in their middle school and high school years in a third world country because they were out of their comfort zone. And we can make such a difference. Once I opened up, because I, like all of you, put it away for a box for a long time. But once I started talking in my community, where they knew me as a teacher very well, especially because of the Amazon trips, I found an openness that I had no idea that was there. And people saying, oh my goodness, I needed to hear this message. And all of you have the power, the magnificence to do that same thing. And that is such a gift that we all have.
Thank you so much. And lastly, I just have to say, when I was listening to what you were talking about, walking along the beach, I just kept seeing you walking along the beach, and I wanted to go on with that story. So from the beach to the book, can you just tell us about that piece that it seemed like it was radiating out of you?
I will tell a quick story about what happened on the beach and how I got from the beach to actually deciding to be able to write the book. In my search, I was looking to what it was. How did that happen? I ended up being told it's religious, so I got a master's in theology. Didn't work. Someone said it's physics, so I got a PhD in physics. Didn't work. And one of my walks on the beach, I learned how to figure it out by the beach in Siesta Key is beautiful. It's perfect every day. Just that's all I had to do: see the sun rise, see the sun set. And then one day I was very consumed in one of my machinations in my mind, and I had this thing that was disrupting my thoughts and all the chatter in my head, which I wasn't used to. I thought, I'll figure it out on the beach. As soon as I see the sunrise, this is perfect, I'll be fine. And I was 20 steps away from the tide, put on some shorts and a t-shirt, and I was so angry because it was foggy, and I couldn't see from here to the wall, or even to you gentlemen. I couldn't see the tide, it was so foggy. I was stomping through, and gosh, I can't even have the sunrise this morning. I needed my sunrise to figure all this out. And nobody was on the beach. It was cold and drizzly. And then all of a sudden, having lived there a few years, I knew everybody on the morning walk. There was this man walking towards me. And as you politely do, you move to one side or the other so you can pass without bumping into each other. So I moved a little closer to the water, and so did he. And as we got closer, I kept moving away, and he kept walking in my path. And I was angry because he was appropriately dressed in a jacket, and I wasn't. And he got closer and closer, and he walked right up to me as much as I tried to avoid him. And he looked at me, and he said, "Doesn't the ocean sound beautiful this morning?" I was so attached to seeing the sunrise, I didn't realize there was another way that I could have the same experience. And it just stopped me. I was frozen. I was like, wow. And he woke me up. I said, yeah, it does sound wonderful. And he walked on. I thought, wow, what a cool guy. And I turned around to thank him and to tell him, and he was gone. And then I looked the other way at There were no other footsteps on the sand other than mine either way. And that was part of my awakening, to realize I might not know the answers. I need to let go and figure out. It'll come to me, but I can't be attached in any way. There's a language that may be different than the way I'm trying to teach, and that's how the book ended up coming out in formulation.
I'm glad I asked that question.
So my question is, in the healer-healee relationship, what do you think the best role that the healee can take, and then in the healer, like as far as the responsibility in the healing process?
I think, yeah, this one over here. I think the best role is just to be open. Just be available, be open, because the information may not come to you at the moment, but just relax, be present, and be open.
If I could give you one suggestion, it would be when the healer says, what would you like to discuss today, or what would you like to work on? My suggestion would be to say, whatever my soul's priority is.
That is the whole premise of reconnective healing, and what drew me there, and that is that the universe, your soul, knows where the healing needs to go. And so our job as the person healing is to open your doors and say, let it flow, let it go where it needs to go, and not where I think it needs to go, and probably not where you think it needs to go either. I learned that healing myself. I kept trying to direct it, and it needed to go somewhere else.
So for me, when I was at the well with the life review with Jesus, I couldn't move on into the other realms of heaven until I passed that. And the message that I got from that, which is the message I bring to everyone, when I looked in the well, I saw all the places that I withheld love. And that withholding of love was what was the source of the manifestation of the ailments in my body. And he said to me, it's okay, I love you, and you're forgiven. And anytime I try to beat myself up, I just remember, it's okay, I love you, you're forgiven.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of you, I want to thank the panel. Thank you very much.